Hello there. Hi. Hi, sweet girl. You're smelling trees, aren't you? Well, at least you know the comet kisses another dog. And then, yeah. But I'll tell you. It'll happen. You're in trouble, Rocky. You're sitting there like you're in trouble. It was great on the walk. Yeah? Yeah. He's on his walk.
Well, it's probably gonna take long, or how much time did they give? How much
I'm
time
sorry.
did they give?
For what?
Yeah.
Oh, she was
Yeah,
aggressive
that was
with
me.
food.
Yeah. She's
Oh.
lovely.
That was the problem, and they both work, so during the day, there's just too many variables.
Yeah, it's not a great environment, it's not
Yeah,
palatable.
exactly.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no,
I'll be
You
back.
You need like
No.
separate living spaces for them to have, and then what's the
For
point, right?
somebody to really be there, cause she responded to the no, like back off.
Oh,
no.
yeah, but if you're not there,
That's
Right.
And we weren't.
or if you can't have them separated.
Yeah, and
Right.
yeah, no,
Right.
so
Hi,
it's
Laura.
just not
Great.
possible.
You hear me? How can I tell?
Oh, her ears and her sniffer work
Oh,
great.
totally. I mean,
Yeah.
she's like so focused. She's like,
I
smell
think
the
she's
food.
well, and I really think she's been blind for a long time. Well,
Yeah.
she's not completely blind, but she sees like kind of shadows and
Shadows, yeah.
shapes.
Ours was working, he was great, right up until the end.
Yeah.
And then it was like, within hours, he went from being a complete dog to.
Yeah, I can imagine you also talking about money. Yeah, it was awful.
Which is good, like, that's how you want it to
Yeah, that's
happen,
gonna go
but
into-
it's still, it's
Yeah.
like
But you're not really
brutal.
quite prepared for it, and
No.
yeah.
And he was 8 when we got him, so I mean, we were just happy that we got as many as we got it. So he
Yeah.
was like the best.
Aw.
They're I'm so stoic, you know, they put on such a great show,
Mhm.
even though they're just,
Yeah.
really struggling, so. That was the hard part too, you think, you know, if they don't let you know that they're not doing
No,
so
well,
good.
I lost
And
a
then you-
chocolate lab, it's been several years now, but
Yeah, they're
he threw up at like 1 o'clock in the morning one night, and then he stayed downstairs, which he'd never done. He'd been an outside only dog, living up by himself his entire life till he came to us. And so I knew like something was
Yeah.
dramatically wrong, because
Yeah.
there's no reason he would have done that.
Right.
Stayed downstairs with him. He never got up to go back upstairs again. We barely got him outside.
that was
Came back-
polyhemangiosarcoma.
No, he ended up, so he had pretty significant hip dysplasia and spondylosis of his spine. And so he was on some pretty good anti-inflammatory and painkillers just to keep everything. He was about 130 pounds, he was a big boy. And so it ended up being a splenic tumor that,
Yes, that's hemangiosarcoma.
that had ruptured.
Yeah.
And so he was slowly bleeding out.
Yeah.
And the thing was, because I said, well, it's always been my understanding that like everyone that I know that's ever lost a dog to that, it's been a painful thing. Like they know that they have it.
Actually, no, it's not. It's a painless. Yeah.
When they have a tumor on their spleen, though, it is generally actually very painful. According to what the shelter vets have told me over the years with things. So when I went back and I told them this is what happened, and she's like, yeah, she said once that happens, there's nothing to stop it.
Yeah.
You know, and had we kept him home for a couple more hours, it would have just happened on its own. When you know how they do the first, like the sedative, and then they do the final? And he was almost gone with the sedative, he was so far gone at that point.
Well, they're bleeding out.
Yeah.
He passed away in our arms. He had a seizure and he was gone. So it was pretty. But I'm glad that you could hold him. And
Yeah.
him and we were all together. So, but I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah, so,
No, it never gets any easier.
male-
I mean, the double digits of dogs I've lost in my life. It never
Oh
gets
God.
any
well,
easier.
and and labs and goldens are the highest. They have the highest rate of hemangiosarcoma, and males are 2 to 1.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny. Because we were like trying to figure out like, well, what's going on with this thing? Like, it's so common.
It's become more unfortunately common.
Why isn't there more research? And they don't really know.
I think it's you, Tori. It's you. He doesn't do this with me. He knows better.
Yeah.
Yes, go back to your spot. That's my medical costume.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Adorable.
But humans get it's an epithelial sarcoma. So I just looked up epithelial sarcoma, and humans get it too, but it's on the hand. Usually we're in trauma, and it's 2 to 1 ratio for men.
Huh.
And it's the same thing. It seems benign because it's just a little open. You're like, oh, it's just a wound. Just wash it, let it heal. Right, and a month later, it's scabbed over, but it's still there. And by then, it's become so malignant because it's epithelial, and it's just spread everywhere, and it's too late. And that's the same thing. Hemangiosarcoma. It's cancer of the epithelial lining of your blood vessels. That's why it ends up in places like the liver and the spleen, around the heart.
Very distant.
And it's very benign. Like, you don't know, and then it'll be a really small tumor initially, and they'll just lose a little bit of blood. That's why it's like, oh, they're just getting old.
Right.
Right.
Well, that was it.
Yeah.
She
Right,
said.
just getting old.
So we tried to look, like look, and she says, well, have you noticed anything? I said, well, over the last couple months, he's slowed down. I said, but he's like almost 12 years old, and he was
Right.
severely
Right.
obese his entire life.
Well, that's
So it came to us.
that's
So
why it's
he had a
really-
low thyroid. It was like there were so many things.
that you
Right,
could-
ours
and
was losing balance, and you could tell his hind legs were starting to get a little
Yeah,
off,
but
but it
again-
wasn't like crazy.
Oh,
He was almost 13.
He was still jumping, and
That was
just,
Ben until the
yeah.
day before everything happened. You know.
So on one hand, it's this horrible thing. On the other hand, it's like they get to be themselves until the very
Right
end.
to the end. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a great Facebook group called Life After HSA Hemangiosarcoma, and it's in a way it's great because it talks about those things and like people are like, what happened?
You're ridiculous. You know
Right.
that?
But,
Isn't it ridiculous?
but it's in a way it's great because like you everyone can
You
sort
like
of
hot
not just
dogs, I
commiserate,
think.
but then you can also start to go, oh
Definitely.
my God, like how crazy this is because
Hot
it's like,
dog
like
dogs.
yeah. No, but it's just
Well, after he had actually
Yep.
It's hefty.
as I told her, I said his belly never
Yeah,
looked like
and I'm not
Right,
helping.
exactly.
She said, I'm
I'm
pretty
not
sure we
helping
know what it
because
is.
I
Yeah,
give
so
him
she ended up
goodies.
doing that thing on it, and she's like, oh yeah, this is all blood. She said it's.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess.
She says, we can open them up and find out for you. She says, but I'm going to tell you this is.
Well, that was the hard part. Is the vet wanted to do imaging and wanted to do, and they're like, we don't know. They knew he was dying, and they gave him back to us, but they wanted us to give him more money.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of vets like that.
Yeah, I know.
It sucks.
Well,
Well, we were on
yeah.
the road with him.
Yeah, we were.
Oh, so they just wanted as much as they could get out of you while.
Yeah, and we were like, we just want to get him home, and so they gave us all this liver because his liver enzymes were really low, and he was at liver failure basically.
And we were like, we just had blood work done, previously there was no issue,
There was nothing.
Yeah,
No.
healthy dog, and we're like, what's going on? So on one hand, I'm glad we did the blood test.
Right.
And on
But
the
they
other
wanted,
hand-
but then he would have died that night at the vet all alone,
Right.
in the
Right.
cold, like.
I had that
cage.
experience years ago at PetSmart Banfield when I was in my 20s with a dog, and had I not gone to a different vet, I lost him anyway, but had I not gone to a different vet, that guy was trying to convince me to give them the okay to do exploratory surgery on him,
Yeah.
and he would have died on the table. And,
Right, oh yeah.
and she said, when I took the results of the blood work to her, she said, they knew that before they talked
Oh,
to
yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah.
They knew he would die on
Oh,
the
yeah.
table.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
So, oh yeah.
yeah. So we were
I
glad
took that all the way up the corporate chain. It didn't accomplish much, but
Yeah.
that was back before Yelp.
No,
and all
it's-
those
Oh
other-
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
yeah.
it's like it's like what are you doing this? Are you trying to save him for you? Or
Right.
you
Oh no,
it's
that
like-
was all about money because they told this was how this was the.
No, but
system.
they take advantage of you.
Oh,
because
they're
of
so
that.
vulnerable,
Of course,
yeah.
right? They take as opposed
So
to
it was. Oh yeah, that was one of the
That's
things.
right,
But he,
right.
I remember him saying something to along the lines of, he's like, well, it could be as low as $800, but it could also go as high as $5,000. Depends on what we find once we're there. I'm like, so you want me to write you a $5,000 check basically?
For you just to basically like.
And then to know after the fact that he would have died on the table, the answer, they would have charged me $5,000.
Of course they would. Yeah.
That's how that
but they
would play
gave us a
out.
bunch of dog
Like-
food
like liver,
and
yeah.
antibiotics and some
And
liver
Serena, yeah.
and a bunch of stuff, and they sent us away with a hope and a prayer, knowing full well that he wasn't going to make it through the night. And so we get to the hotel, we didn't want to put him in the car, and I'm looking at him, I'm going like, and I thought they put an IV in him and gave him, you know, something so he'd be a little bit better. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, he's not gonna make it through the night. Like he's dying right in front of us.
Well, and the one thing is, the morning
So I
before
called
he died,
him.
like I looked at him and he said he was ready to go. So I mean, I knew, and it was
I know, but
it was
we
a
were-
Hail Mary. effort.
Yeah, we were just on the road all day trying to find a vet because we called so many vets.
And it's really bad. Like they're like, I'm sorry. Even though they say urgent care, we only have one vet. We're not taking new clients. So
we
literally
showed up
called
at a place in
four.
Cortez, Colorado, right at opening, and they don't let you come in because of COVID and all that.
Right.
And so we called, and they're like, "Sorry," and like he's dying, but
Yeah,
they
I mean,
didn't.
that's
They
what's-
wouldn't see us.
And then,
But
and then
you
we
hear
were
stories
calling
like that
all
too, even
over
people
the
with their
Four
vets are
Corners
like, I'm
region
sorry, we don't have
to
any.
try to
clinic,
find
or
somebody.
you have to drive 2 or 3 hours away.
Nobody would
Right.
take us.
So I mean,
We
like,
found
the whole
one.
walk in the
We found
door.
one, and we had to
it's-
drive
and
for
the
like
whole,
5
it's all
hours
changed,
to
like,
get
the
there.
whole, like,
And it
like,
didn't-
pre-COVID versus post.
didn't really matter.
I mean, it was just something like.
At
I
least we
wasn't
got the blood
prepared
work
for,
done, so we
you know,
kinda had an
and we were
idea
just
of
like,
what
oh my
was
God.
going
But then I'm
on.
like, he was ready to go, and it was like, it's his timeline, and
Right. Well, and it's like you said, at least he didn't suffer like it was quick. And,
yeah, yeah,
You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting that you had that same. I know it's maybe they didn't tell you what it was, but that's
yeah. Well, I mean, like I
That's
said,
what
she
it-
didn't go in.
that's-
We didn't know in advance, but when she
But
did
it's
the
so
needle
quick,
aspiration,
yeah.
she's like, and I watched the, I've been with PACC for 10 years.
yeah.
I watched the syringe fill up. My kids didn't really understand what was happening, but
Yeah.
when I saw it,
Yeah.
and I looked at her and I said, "It was a spinning organ." She says, "I'm gonna bet money." She said, "I bet my license on it."
It's most
That's what it
often
was.
the spleen.
Yeah, followed by like liver.
She said the
the
amount
heart,
of blood that there was and how quickly it happened over the course of just
Yeah.
a matter of hours. She's like, "Yeah, that's
It's like a vampire
anything else.
demon cancer.
Yeah.
And it's the deadliest
yeah."
And
cancer.
they're even saying like even for dogs where they know and they will go in and aspirate, like they'll go in and remove like that amount of blood. They're saying it's so fast they'll go back in and a day or two later it's full again and they're done. And even if they do surgery, they're like you might get maybe a week, maybe a month.
And what put them through that?
Right, and then there's like, oh well you can do
There are some
chemo.
people who like put them on like different diet. People who caught it early and were able to like there was one.
This like turkey tail they'll give him and some like herb, like I forget what it was to control the bleed. Because so I'll read and they're like, my dog's having a bleed today. Like I would be freaking out.
Right?
And they're giving like turkey tail stuff and some other Chinese medication and phosphorus and then it'll help. And then the dog will have an appetite. But there's this like where it goes on and all you I'm like, and the dog like ends up really just then you have a really bad bleed and like the gum like ours like his tongue was totally pale, gums were pale. And we're like, yep, here we go.
And it was thrown up yellow. Now we at least kind of like know what to look for. And that was the other thing I was going to tell you is the prescription for it. Because one of the reasons they think that they get it is because of it'll start as an epithelial cancer on the belly from
they get
too much sun
exposed sun.
exposure. And around here, so we got ours. He was 8, and we think he had probably been outside a lot. He
Yeah.
already had
Well,
like
and mine, when we brought him home, his eyes were like this, and my vet said the first time I took him in, she's like, "I've never seen because he's obviously a full-blown chocolate lab, and I've never seen one with eyes like this before." And over the course of the next 30 days that I had him, living indoors, his eyes,
Finally.
so the muscles had actually atrophied
right,
from squinting for
right,
so long.
right.
Ah.
So by the time he passed, they were those big old round chocolate
So,
lab eyes.
so what they say to do is if you are concerned about or you want to do what you can to prevent it is to put put a little
Cover them up
Like
when
the
they're going to
belly,
be out in
yeah.
the sun.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is vitamin D3 is supposed to really help with reducing or giving the body the ability to fight cancer
Yeah.
for dogs.
Yeah.
And they have a hard time absorbing that.
Alright, thank you. But thank you though for letting us hang
Bye.
out.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's good to
absolutely.
discuss these because then you can kind of share.
Oh, yeah,
we can
no,
share
absolutely.
our information. And then in the future, it's
Right.
like you can be a little bit more prepared, I guess.
Well, and you never know when you learn something like that. You never know. Sometimes maybe it's not meant for me, but something's gonna happen with somebody else.
This
And
is
say, hey, you know what?
The
I
biggest
just learned
hallmark,
about this.
the
Like,
biggest
that
hallmark
happens a
thing
lot.
that
Oh, yeah.
we noticed with our dog, the last like few days excessively thirsty, and our dog is not a water drinker. So
Right.
like if
I had
besides
mid
diabetes,
kidney,
yeah.
kidney failure, and
But
that
if
was in
you're-
the last 2 weeks, like.
Yeah, if you're just like
Couldn't get
really
enough water.
water, yeah. And so we were like, oh, that's part of the thing that we try to
Right.
increase it.
Laura says, there are too many voices, nobody touching me.
Do you want attention?
Yeah.
Is that what this is all
She's
about?
adorable.
She's really
You
cute.
a big dog?
She's a sassy
You a
little
big
thing.
dog?
Yeah.
You a big dog?
Look at her.
And it's funny because she looks at you, but because she doesn't really see,
See you?
she doesn't quite make eye
Who's a
contact.
good
You're
dog?
looking at her eyes and she's
And
like,
she's like-
looking
Yeah,
at
she's
your neck.
looking over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got her nose in her ear eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they work, and boy,
Oh my god.
and I do nose work with her all the time when she's up here. I ice scatter.
Oh nice.
the
It kind of
treats.
keeps all, oh nice.
The first time she came back up, so she had been with us for a bit, and then she went to foster, and then she came back to the shelter. And the first day that she was in here, I find this kind of stuff fascinating, because I watched her. She walked around, and she found her boundaries.
Oh
She
yeah.
jumps up and down off this couch all day long by herself. And it's always at least a double. She does the first time, she puts her feet up, then she goes back down, and then